Hello and welcome to this very important video. Today we are going to look into the drama around the tariffs, the Trump tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. And as you probably know, we had some major stock action here across the market, but especially also on Tesla. So let's take a look what the hell happened here and what we are doing next. That is the important question. So right now we see that Tesla is getting slaughtered or was getting slaughtered. If you look at the peak on Friday afternoon, we were at 420. Like, think about that, 420 in less than 2 trading sessions. And then the tariffs were announced that Trump is going to take action over the weekend, and it crashed down to 400. And then today was a pretty dark day, fell all the way down to way below 380 and ends up at 383. So what does it all mean? I want to give you a quick overview over the tariffs, what's happening so far, why I believe this is completely fake news. And I said it very early on Friday right away. It's pretty obvious what's happening here, but the market doesn't care, drops anyway. So let's figure out if that is a buying opportunity and what the risks are in doubling down from here. So first of all, just let's address the elephant in the room. There is a little $2.5 up move after hours. I think that is a function of this year. Palantir surges 15% after company posts strong earnings. So Palantir just came out a few minutes ago. Earnings are up dramatically. I think that is another super bullish signal for AI and all AI companies like Tesla. So we see that this is going on, and that is a little bit the reason I'm sharing Palantir is this is a taste of, we are in this incredible, optimistic, positive bull market, in my opinion. That is the bigger setting here for the markets. Tesla, after Tesla earnings, for anyone who understands anything about that stock, we know a giant wall that Tesla will jump over and jump into the moon from there is coming in June with Robotaxi launch, based on Elon's posture, what he actually said in the meeting, in the earnings call. It's pretty obvious that this timeline will be met, maybe missed by 3 months or 2 months or 1 month, maybe not even that, and that Optimus is coming. So we are extremely bullish right now, extremely bullish on Tesla. But let's make no mistake, this kind of move for someone who's not just long stocks, but options and all kinds of stuff leveraged is brutal. So short term, this is a total disaster and horrible. But midterm, there's no reason to panic here. So I commented on X. You should make sure you follow me on X because these are very volatile times and very action-packed times with Trump. It's very important if you are in any way leveraged or in any way options trading that you're staying on top of this. For everyone who's new to the channel, we are Tesla bulls here. I have a 11,700 price target for 2030 based on a discounted cash flow model, mostly because of Optimus, followed by Robotaxi. The rest doesn't matter too much. That is for 2030. We believe more and more this is very de-risked. So there's a very low chance this does not happen. There's a higher chance something bigger is happening. But 11,000 is a good target. That gives you roughly an 89%, or now more than that, 90% annual return if you just put 100% of your portfolio into Tesla and hold it. But because we're greedy, we are trying to generate alpha, and that's where it gets very tricky and risky. Trading around that core portfolio with options and TSLL, like an ETF, leveraged ETF, plus options on TSLL. Which are very capital efficient, but more risky, of course. So let's take a look what I tweeted about posted about the tariffs. Let me go into that. So let's start at the back end. What just happened? So Zero Hedge at 1:22 p.m. posted, Trump says call with Trudeau went very well. As you probably know, this morning it was all looking very bad. And then Trump had a call with Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico. She absolutely caved and gave Trump more or less what he wanted. Trump in return then pulled the tariffs and pushed the starting date of the tariffs 1 month out for Mexico, basically telling Mexico, good little Mexico, we are on the right track. I will stop the pain for you right now, but let's make sure we are driving this home. And Sheinbaum totally caved. Trudeau was a little more complicated. And so what we know is that there was a call at 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time between Trump and Trudeau. Now we know Trump said call with Trudeau went very well, not surprisingly. To understand what's actually going on here with Trump's tariff strategy, I think it's very important to understand. Here's a little comment of mine, how I commented on Claudia Scheinbaum of Mexico. We have to understand that the US tariffs, the way they're designed against Mexico and Canada, come with incredible force, right? They're very destructive for Canada and Mexico. They are attached on a condition to be removed, which has nothing to do with economics. It has to do with Trump demanding closed borders. Fentanyl has to be stopped. I read that he is effectively demanding from Canada, efforts that cost roughly $1.5 billion to Canada, which is like nothing for Canada as an economy. And that's kind of the carrot. Put 1.5 billion into border security and a bunch of stuff he wants, and he puts away the tariffs. The tariffs actually affect 40% of the GDP of Canada, which is insane. That's the exports to the United States. And any kind of retaliation from Canada or Mexico is ridiculous because the trade deficit is $600 billion of both combined into the United States. So they make $600 billion more than the US makes exporting to them. That creates a highly asymmetric situation, right? If you can basically punish them with $600 billion trade deficit and they can't do anything back, so it nets out at 600 billion, that's their damage and zero damage to the United States if you net it out. That's a very asymmetric war. And that's why Trump is going to win. They can't do anything. Their economies would go into recession if they don't do anything. So this is asymmetric. That is why Trump is so ruthless about putting in the tariffs before he even starts the negotiation. He just puts on the tariff and then starts to negotiate, because it's better to negotiate with your opponent or whatever you call it when they are under pain, right? If you just threaten pain, they can do all kinds of stupid things. So in Trump out of the deal manner, he just puts on the screws, creates a lot of pain, and then says, oh, by the way, let's have a negotiation. So that's why they're caving so fast. And the probability that Canada also caves this week, probably today or tomorrow, I think is incredibly high, because if they don't, these tariffs will push them into a recession very quickly. And all the talks about retaliation, forget it. There is simply nothing there. Why this affects Tesla a little bit more is because a bunch of Canadian leftist politicians, that includes conservatives that are also leftist in Canada, they're targeting specifically Elon. There is talks about the former finance minister, I think, of Canada, saying she wants 100% tariffs just on Teslas. I think that's not going to work out too well for them, saying these things. And another dude somewhere in Canada just pulled a Starlink contract of 100 million. So they're trying to target Elon, which I think is probably not very well perceived by the markets for Tesla, but it's kind of a ridiculous thing. They're not that important. So, and there will be repercussions sooner or later. So I think Canada in total makes it more complicated than Mexico. Just for color, I think that Mexico negotiations have also a layer to them that makes them a little more complicated, because, as you probably know, Mexico has a cartel problem, a drug cartel problem, a huge one. They are very institutionalized and structural, embedded in Mexico. And I'm pretty sure for Scheinbaum, it's not just economics at stake. She has to be very cautious if she wants to live, to not just go against the cartels. So I think what's going on there behind the scenes is she has to negotiate between Trump and the cartels. But that's not even a bad thing. I think she can make very clear to the cartels, if she doesn't do what Trump wants, there is a real risk of US special forces and military intervention into the cartels inside Mexico. And that's definitely not what the cartels want. So I think that's kind of the negotiation behind the scenes that's going on, that Scheinbaum tells the cartels, dudes, we have to close the border. We have to look a little mean to you, maybe arrest a few guys. I can make sure the US is not starting like a real hot war against you. And I think then the cartels are going to say, whatever, do what you need to do. She can go back to Trump and give Trump what he wants. And that's how Mexico works, in my opinion. Whereas Canada is a completely different situation. There's the fight not against the cartels, but against the woke cartel, which is very different what they want. And let's see what happens. But I think overwhelming economic force always wins. Now, finally, There was a question about Europe. Someone asked me what I think Trump will do in Europe. Now, in Europe, the situation is a little different. First of all, I think on Trump's top priorities is border security. He always says this: border security and then inflation. That's always what he says, the priorities. Border security has nothing to do with Europe. So in Europe, there are multiple factors why the whole tariff war is less important and will be less hot. Number one, Trump wants nothing from Europe as badly as he wants it and needs it from Canada and Mexico. He needs secure borders. He needs to stop the fentanyl. And only these two can give him that. In Europe, he just wants some tactical, NATO stuff, a little Russia. Well, Russia doesn't even matter for that negotiation. So it's less urgent. And the weapon of the United States against Europe is much weaker. So here I'm describing that. We have $600 billion deficit with Mexico and Canada. And trade deficits are basically the power of the weapon you have, right? If there's a massive trade deficit with you, you can inflict massive pain on the people you have this trade deficit with. In Europe, the US has only 210 billion. So the weapon of the US is 3 times smaller against Europe. So that means Europe can withstand any kind of trade war better. The pain inflicted on the US is relatively higher for what you get, and the objective is less important. So these are 3 factors why a trade war against Europe is not going to work like that. Europe can put up much more resistance. The pain on the US is higher. The pain on Europe is lower, and the whole thing is not worth as much as this war. So it's clear that you start with Mexico and Europe, demonstrate to Mexico and Canada, demonstrate to Europe, look, I can be really mean, and Europe is probably going to strike a deal with Trump before he does tariffs. So I think the risk of tariffs with Europe are much lower, and I also think the risk of tariffs against Mexico and Canada is very low, even though they already started. Because it's very likely they cave this week, it's all over before it even started. Now, China, that's a whole long story. I think there are much more serious things going on with China that are more long-term. We can cover this in a different session. I do not think that is something that drives the markets this week necessarily. So what does it all mean? I think when we look at Tesla and the effects of all of that, look, it's up 5 now. I don't know if there's any news coming out right now about Trudeau, but I think the situation that I predicted is, this is fake news. Tesla fell too much. I think it's very likely going to go up to 400 again. I think there is some negative sentiment injection into Tesla, which is not great because Tesla is a momentum stock and the momentum now has completely been broken after ER. So there is a risk, even if everything goes back to a level, that Tesla does not go back to 420 quickly. It could lag, right? It lagged the whole time today behind the market recovery and behind other stuff. So I think there's definitely a little bit of a narrative, broken short-term narrative here for the tactical traders here. And we have to see what that means. But in general, I think I view it strategically. In 5 months or so, we have that wall coming where Tesla will make a giant leap. That is inevitable if Robotaxi launches successfully. I think the odds that it launches successfully are extremely high at this point. Maybe it's delayed a month or 2, no one cares. So that means the market understands that to some extent. So if you drop Tesla right now, you're dropping it against a target very high up that is just coming up rapidly. So the lower it drops, the more insane the suspense gets upwards. And so I think that's the situation. The risk for anyone who's leveraged or options trading this whole thing is always the same risk. If you are a buy and hold investor, it doesn't even matter your exposure as long as it's like below, let's say 130% or something of your portfolio is very low, because even if that thing gets crushed down to 350 in between, who cares, right? You just hold through it and you win in the end. Not investment advice. I'm just thinking out loud. The risk is if you're leveraged or options trading with expiration dates, you can get destroyed, obviously. So anyone who's trying to generate alpha with more aggressive instruments, it's always the same. Don't do stupid things in a situation where winning is so easy. And stupid things means anything that puts you at risk, that a short-term drop destroys you so much that you cannot recover even if you're right. So that's the stress tests everyone has to do. Like, how much risk do you actually take? and make sure you're not taking insane risks, especially when it's so easy to win. So what I'm personally doing this week, I de-risk a little bit in the morning, made sure I don't have too much short put exposure. And when Mexico news came out, I put on more risk again. I'm pretty sure, well, we have to see what Canada does. There can be more drops coming if some bad news come. I'm pretty sure we end up like end of the week, but I'm not sure what happens in between. There's definitely some real risk. The odds are this goes just straight back to 400 in my opinion. But there are also probabilities that it drops before. So you have to bridge that potential gap down. Okay, that's it for now. So I think strategically not much to see here, but tactically and short term, risky waters we are in. If you follow the rules to make sure you can't get squeezed out and destroyed in between, I don't think there's any problem here. And if there is a risk for you, then you did something wrong and you should de-risk. Okay, so make sure you follow me on X. I will leave the link to our group below in the description as always. Some people had problems signing up for some reason. There should be in the application on the X community where we discuss these things a little more in depth. There should be a Google Sheets link or Google Form link. Just hit me up on X if there's any kind of problem with that. Okay, see you very soon.